Good morning, everybody. I just received a package from Sony with the Sony A1 Mark II. So I honestly did not expect that, and I got a chance to test it. A lot has changed in terms of ergonomics and performance, and I will cover that in a minute. But the big question is going to be like, is it worth upgrading from the A1 Mark I or another camera body? And most importantly, is this camera worth almost $6,500? Because that's a lot of money and you can do a lot of things with that. So if you're ready, let's answer all those questions together. I have two secrets to share with you here. The first one is that when I saw that this was an A1 Mark II, I was both excited and very sad. Sad, why? Because I have the A1 Mark I, which has been my primary camera for the past 3 years. And I did not want to have to consider upgrading this camera. I love it and I'm like, I don't want to upgrade. Now, it's in my hands. There's a lot to be said about it, and I will share with you as truthfully as possible my thoughts on upgrading or not. We'll be talking about the ergonomics in the first part, then the performance, and last but not least, upgrade or not upgrade. Who is this camera for, and is the price point justified? And my second secret is that this is a pre-production model, and I actually slept in my car because I drove to nature to try to test it over a few days, and I've been sleeping here, and honestly, I'm a little stuffy, but I really want to share with you my thoughts and my experience with this camera because, look, let's get right into it. Ergonomics have changed a lot. Can you tell? Look at them side by side. Around the shutter button, it's a lot more round, and it is exactly like on the A9 Mark III, or A1 is a lot more square. And when you take it in your hand, you do feel the difference. One is a little sharper on the edges than the other one. The Mark II feels more round and better. The thing that many of you are gonna be loving is that new flip screen, right? Just like on the R5, we have this flip screen that goes in all directions. Extremely helpful. If you remember, on the A1 Mark I, on the first gen, we only had it going up, and it was kind of a big surprise at the time why this kind of screen hadn't been implemented. Now, the downside of using that screen is you get a little more thickness on the camera, or at least around the screen, but honestly it's not really a hindrance. I find that the two cameras are still like kind of the same size. Then in terms of buttons at the back, nothing has changed. It is exactly the same. You can see between the A1 Mark I and the A1 Mark II, same buttons right here, but where it changes is on top. So now we have the classic layout of the A7 IV, A7R5, A9 III with that ability to switch modes very quickly from photo to video, just like this. It is helpful. For some of you, this may be a real issue. I've heard two camps on that, and each have their own good justification. So let me know which camp you're on. Are you on the new layouts, or are you more part of the older layouts? And then on that side, we have the same things as on the A1 Mark I and on the A9 III, where you can quickly switch to all the different burst mode or single shot and your autofocus modes. Very helpful. Now, the surprise is that compared to the A1 Mark I, there is also a new magic button, which is at the front of your camera, and it is called C5. That little C5 button allows you by default to have a speed boost when you're taking photos, so that you can, let's say you're in single shot, you can press that and suddenly go to speed boost into high burst at 30 frames per second, because this one Mark II also has 30 frames per second. This is a good idea, but very quickly I actually switched that button and used it for pre-capture. Pre-capture is an incredible mode for any action photographer that I will talk to you about in the performance, because this was mind-blowing to me and I absolutely loved using it. It helped me capture photos that I would have never been able to get. To finish on the ergonomics, we have the same connectivity, exactly the same. It's just the layout is a little different. We have the same memory cards on both sides, and last but not least, we have the same batteries. Thank you, Sony, for not changing batteries. I heard the R5 Mark II from Canon had updated batteries, and the old ones still work, but if you wanted the best performance, you didn't need the new ones, which, wow, okay, surprise. But I love that Sony is actually a little mindful of electronic waste with batteries, at least with batteries, you know. Now, in the box, something else came and there were two other items. The first one is this dual charger that comes in with the box when you buy it. That allows you to charge two batteries at once with a USB-C. And you may be wondering why I charge two at once. I'll explain to you why, because I've actually went through the battery very quickly with the A1 Mark II, and there's a good reason for that, but let's talk about it in the performance. Make sure you watch until the end. There is so much I'm gonna try to cover here, and it's important. And remember, I've been using a pre-production model, but things should not be changing too much from the production one, honestly. Now, this is a little eyepiece that is replaceable for this camera if you want something that is more comfortable. I think some of you think this was a little hard, so now there is one that's a little super soft and a little bigger. Let me know if you prefer the bigger ones, or if you actually ever change them on your camera, or if the basic ones work for you. I'm curious. I find that when I use the bigger one, my eye actually sees a lot more at the bottom of the screen, like outside. It leaks more than when I'm using the small one. So it's a good idea for some of us, I'm sure. Now let's talk performance, because does it make sense to upgrade from my A1 Mark I? It's gonna be a real question. I think maybe one function may put me over the edge of upgrading, but let's go outside to talk about it. And if you don't know me, my name is Pierre Lambert. I'm a travel adventure photographer and the creator of the 30-day adventure to great photos, a step-by-step method for taking your photography to the next level and training your photographer's eyes. There's a new session soon. Check out the link in the description with the program. I'd love to have you participate. And remember, on this YouTube channel, I'm sharing tutorials and photography adventures. So if you want to progress, just subscribe and leave a big thumbs up to that video if you like it. Now, let's get outside and talk performance, because there's been a lot I've been shooting and it's very diverse and I love it. All right, let's talk about the performance, because this thing is fast and allowed me to take photos that I would have never been able to take without that one little function in here that is just incredible, and maybe one reason to upgrade. But let's talk a little more. I got a few notes here. The first thing to know is that the A1 Mark II has 50 megapixels, 30 frames per second RAW, and is the same sensor as the A1 Mark I. So could be a bummer for some, hoping for like some crazy technology change, but it is the same. The sensor is incredible, but what comes out new here is that there's now a different processing unit, just like on the A9 Mark III, for subject recognition autofocus, which honestly is pretty cool. And I did notice a difference from the A1 Mark I on several aspects. The first one is that you can detect subjects a lot better, and you now have the ability to go into subject detection, but also auto subject detection. What is auto subject detection? It is a way to tell the camera you can detect anything you want, whether it be bird, human, animals, insect, car, train, planes, and airplanes. And I'll let you figure that out when I'm taking my photo. Now, interestingly enough, I gave that feedback a while back at an event with Sony, and I was like, how come Canon has it and we don't have it? And now it is present in the A1 Mark II. I'm not saying it was just thanks to me, but I think a lot of that feedback came through. I think I even have a Canon video where I talk about how cool it is, and I wish I had it on the Sony. Now, the one thing to know is that when you're in auto subject detection, it's going to be slightly slower than if I had selected straight bird and would shoot just birds. Why? Because it will have need a little bit of time to kind of detect it, right? But we're talking about like, I don't know, half seconds or even less. Honestly, it is extremely fast, but I will say if I'm shooting a hummingbird like I'm doing in this video that you're watching, well, I'll put it straight for birds and then I'll lock into that. And you can see it's tracking it pretty well, even with backlight. Now, the smaller the bird, I would say the harder, or like the smaller the bird in your frame, the harder it is. A big test in the AI autofocus detection for me is to go in wide focus area, okay, completely wide, and let the camera pick the subject, right, when it comes in the frame. So I was on the road, there's this really cool road, and the car was passing by, and I was just focusing, just keeping my AF on button, and when the car came in, it really locked on very fast on that car. As you can see in the image, I got a cool shot, perfect. Now, when I was focusing on the foreground and the background was really blurred out because I think it was at f2.8, it did not find a car passing behind. Why? I think because it was too blurry and I was in a focal plane that was too close to me. Now, again, if you're using that small hitbox and you're focusing on the car, it will take the whole car. So depending on how close you are, you may want to turn on the object detection if you're trying to take parts or like specific like angles of that car, specific logo or something. You want to be careful. Same with the face detection. If you want the ear and you're shooting jewelry, you don't want the whole face or the eyes to be in focus. You want to turn off those detection instantly. Now, the one thing that really set it apart in my user experience was not only the AI autofocus, but also and mainly the pre-capture mode. Literally allows you to start taking photos before you take photos so that you can get that photo of the bird while it's taking off when you had no clue when it would take off. And this is insane and it works crazy. You can go back from 0.03 from the top of my head seconds all the way to 1 second back in time. When I half press, you start basically buffering that 1 second or half second of photos constantly, or when I do my autofocus. And literally this is how I got those shots of those birds flying off. Super incredibly useful for action, for birds photography, for all that. It's been just like, wow, I've been amazed. Even it's the same thing as on the A1 III. On the A1 III, I was able to get a flying rabbit in a way of flying. It was like completely off the ground. You do have 120 frames per second on the A1 III, which means when you go back a full second back in time, you have 120 frames plus how many frames you pressed, and that is very overwhelming. You fill up the memory card in no time. The battery drains very fast, also on the A1 Mark II in that mode, but that's understandable. And since you have 30 frames per second on the A1 Mark II, when you go a full second back, you have 30 frames that you can use. I only went 0.5 seconds, which was enough. Otherwise, I just end up filling memory card and memory card. Now you have the speed boost I mentioned also at the beginning, which allows you to press that button at the front and suddenly go into high burst. I changed it to turning on and off pre-capture because I found that a little more helpful. So stabilization inside the camera. We now have 8.5 stops compared to 5.5 stops on the A1 and 7 stops of stabilization on the periphery. So 8.5 stops in the center. Why in the center? Because your sensor is stabilized, so you can stabilize more in the center of your image than on the periphery of the image. Another aspect that has been improved apparently is the high and mid-range ISO. Again, I'm putting a side-by-side image. Let me know which image is which. Can you tell? Can you not tell? They've both been taken at the same ISO. Let me know in the comments if you got it right or not. 2 more things I noticed. One of them is the noise reduction shooting mode, which apparently you can literally use in camera to create those composite images where you need to do noise reduction with, I think, black frames and other types of frames. And there is now this mode, almost like intervalometer, but it's a noise reduction shooting mode. I have not used it. I don't know if it's helpful. I probably would never use it if I'm very honest with you, but I wanted to mention that because it was pretty interesting. And if you remember on the A1 Mark I, by default, and on other cameras, when you're in review of your photos, when you press the function button, by default, it would go to send to phone the image. But now something has changed. By default, it is that menu with all the possibilities of what you can do for when you're in review mode. And I did not know this menu existed because I was like, wow, now you can filter based on conditions. For example, still images or just date or folders or rating, and only see those images inside the review when I'm reviewing images, which can be extremely helpful when you have thousands of photos and videos and you want to review just photos, right? I just checked in the menu and you can do all that on your A1 Mark I. So no need to upgrade if you're just looking for that. I just wanted to let you know because I was like, oh, I may upgrade, this is really helpful. And then I'm like, maybe on the A1 Mark I. And it is. Now, let's talk video very quickly, very briefly. It has the same video functionalities that the A1 Mark I has, 8K, 30 frames per second, 422, 10-bit, 120 frames per second, all that. It's a beast of a video camera, but it also has the auto framing now, which allows you to kind of follow a subject inside a frame by auto framing it. And it exists on other Sony cameras, and they basically put it in this camera now. If you're shooting 8K and you can do that, I think it's pretty sweet. You must not be losing too much resolution. But I haven't tested it, and I don't use it as a video camera most of the time. Honestly, I'm using my A7S III. And for video, now you can also import LUTs and view them directly with LUTs in camera. Very helpful for some of you, I'm sure. But let's talk about who this camera is for. Would I recommend it? Am I gonna upgrade? And at the price point it is at, does it even make sense? Because that A1 Mark I was excellent, and until I got this in my hand, I never thought of upgrading. So let's go in the shade to talk about this. So what do you think? What is it gonna be? Are we gonna upgrade? Are we not gonna upgrade? That's the biggest question. If you're looking for a new camera body and you don't have any, excellent options for the reasons I'm gonna list after. If you already have the Sony A1 and you're already happy, do not upgrade. Get a training, get a workshop, travel, get a new anything else that will help you progress your skills. Maybe get a new lens, who knows? There's a new one coming out too. But if you've been always frustrated by no flip screen, this could be a reason, but so far you made it with no flip screen. Do you need the flip screen? Really? That's the question. Then the ergonomics, if you like that new ergonomics, I think this was going to be a really nice design. Honestly, I actually prefer it over the A1 Mark I, but it's not going to be enough for me to say I'm going to upgrade just because of the ergonomics. Now, there is something that may be worth upgrading for. It's the AI autofocus with the pre-capture. If you're a photographer who does wildlife, action, anything that requires taking photos of subjects without knowing when they're moving or where they're going, that pre-capture F will honestly transform the way you're shooting. It did for me. I got bird shots I never thought I would ever get. Why? Simply by having those frames recorded before I pressed the shutter. I do love this new ergonomics, but I have a camera housing for that one, which means I would have to upgrade again. So I think for now I'll try to forget about this new camera and focus on my old one and never think again that there is a new A1 Mark II, so I don't have to fork the money. Because if you're selling your A1 and then you're getting a new one, you're not gonna sell your A1 at the price of the new camera, obviously, so you may be out $2,000 just to upgrade. And after only 3 years of the camera being on the market, I'm slightly surprised that it's already coming out. I thought a A7 V would come out first, or A7 S4, would come out first, but no. So let me know what you think. At the end of the day, it's a personal choice. Now make sure you grab that free cheat sheet with camera settings that is in the description. And if you want to learn more about back button focus, autofocus, and how my philosophy around it, watch this video. And if you want to learn about how I program my Sony cameras, watch this video. And last but not least, get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. I'm gonna try to take the photos of the eagle if I can find it. Bye.